let's do my top 10 favorite books of all time. And feel free to chime in with your top favorites as well. In order, I have Steinbeck's Cannery Row. I actually want to do a whole series on Steinbeck because he's absolutely one of the most important authors to my life. But Cannery Row was just a little piece of perfection, and it presaged the coming Dharma Bum's rucksack revolution. And the character of Doc is just who I would like to be someday. Then moving on into graphic novels, Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, because it was so beautiful to see what kind of mysticism and your own version of spirituality and memory palaces of all the different forces of nature you could get into one series like that. It was just a fantastic piece of work. Then I would say Annie Dillard's A Pilgrim at Tinker's Creek. That is the very top of nature science writing I've ever seen in my entire life, and she is an inspiration. Speaking of inspirations, the next book is Catch-22, which I still consider to be probably the funniest book that I've ever read. That's my kind of black humor. I know my dad, when he was in college, him and his friend vowed to read it every year for the rest of their lives until they were dead. And then he kept doing it quite that long, but they kept reading it a long time, and I still pick it up every couple years because it is just a perfect gem. The next one is another graphic novel, not as happy. It is Maus. And as someone who has read a lot of Holocaust literature, Maus is the best thing I've ever read, which is interesting because a lot of the really important stuff was published not that long afterwards when memories were fresh. But this was published much, much later. But it is a powerful look at that time in history. Then getting into the finale, anything by Willa Cather. I will say Oh Pioneers, but thanks to my sister Anna, we started reading Willa Cather in my family book club, and she is one of the greatest writers ever to exist on the American continent. And everything she wrote is a pure jewel of perfection. Then moving on to spirituality, I would say Attar's Conference of the Birds. Sufi poetry is very close to my heart, but I would say that is the most influential to me, and that hunt for Simorg. Then the book that radically changed my young life, Strange in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. And that was my first introduction to polyamory. And as soon as I started reading, I'm like, yes, this is how we should be living, not this Protestant Church of the Brethren thing that I grew up in. They were lovely people, but the polyamory made sense to me immediately, and it turned out to be the way I would live my life. And it was the first crack in my Christian armor and helped to really change the person I was going to become. And yes, I know he did write flat female characters, but maybe we'll even do a video about how I think he was a great feminist. And it wasn't that only his female characters were flat. All of his characters were flat, but he was trying his best to be a good feminist. Then for the last ones, I think for my Dostoevsky's, I would say it's a tie between The Devils and the Brothers Karamazov. One is about a family going insane, and the other is about an entire region going insane. And then the very last and most favorite books of all time, again, is a tie. Of course, one of them is going to be Moby Dick, but the others would be my books, which are graphic novels inspired by Moby Dick, mostly because this was my first sense of the muse coming from outside you and just putting stuff in your head. These weren't from me. These were just delivered through me, and it's really fascinating to see that that's how the world works. So, they're my top 10 books. Feel free to shout out yours as well, and we're going to be discussing more in the Discord.